Welcome everybody to another episode of Founders Talks, where we talk to founders about how they got started and where they're going. Today we have a very special, I would say, two guests involved because the story of Secure Bancard, it's not a journey of a single founder, but actually a love story. To tell that story, I have Kevin Smith and Elaina Smith from Secure Bancard. Let's just dive right in, man. Because this is a very, very story that I can resonate with. Being a founder with my significant other, it really puts things into perspective. And I'd love to get started, from the very beginning. So, Kevin, how exactly did you land into payments?
Extremely fortunate. Extremely fortunate, right place, right time. I am in a place in my life where I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And all I understand at this point is I no longer want to be doing manual labor. I would love to do something exciting and something innovative. And I was very into computer science and computer programming. So I decided I needed to go back to college. Needed to get my degree. That's how you make big money, is you earn it, you go get a degree. So I answered an ad in the paper to do data entry for a small ISO in Southern California, not having any understanding of truly what they did or what the process of their business was. And fortunately for me, that gentleman in that company was a company called Bancard Systems, and that gentleman that ran that company was a man by the name of Stephen Dunn. Stephen became a mentor for me throughout my entire career in payments. So it was very fortunate. I ended up going to school at night, getting my degree, turning around and finding out that I had no ability to go to utilize that degree because I would have to take a huge pay cut to get out of payments, because I'd found payments was my home. And that's where I stayed.
So obviously you're very fortunate to find someone who, almost paved the road and really laid their foundation to, later on what we become Secure Bancard. So you're there grinding away, inputting, data into this probably, very old computer, I would say at the time, no offense. I can imagine they were very large at the time being. Yes. So, why don't you walk us through the transition between, you leave California, if I'm not mistaken, you go to New York. And what happens, why did you leave California, head to New York, sunny weather, go for the cold?
Sure, I was very fortunate. I worked for the same company for the first 7 years of my introduction into credit card processing. Like I said, it was this small ISO run by this gentleman, Stephen Dunn. Stephen, in turn, at the time, this was the first true acquisition cycle, so to speak, in our industry. A company by the name of PMT bought Stephen's company. So they gave me the opportunity to branch out and move on. So I went to work for Concord EFS. Concord EFS had a facility in New York that we had acquired. And I went in as the general manager for that facility, running the ISO business for Concord EFS in New York City. An exciting time in my life. Your first opportunity to live, as it was for me, in a big city, doing fun things, exciting things. We were the new innovative partner in the processing space at the time. And that's where, luckily, I ran into Elaina when we were there. Elaina, came in to be the auditor and eventually became the next Mrs. Smith. I was so excited that I was able to meet her, and I was so excited.
Mrs. Smith, I like to say.
So it was a very exciting time. It was a very innovative time. Learning how in that position, how to grow, manage, and run a company. I had run operations before, but I had not really run a company. And in that position at Concord, I was able to learn how to run a company.
Right, so it was almost 7 years you spent in California, right? From there, you have this chance of moving to New York. Imagine, was it a nice, fancy office in the middle of the city, overlooking that?
Hardly. Hardly.
It was hardly. It was a fantastic address.
Okay.
Right in the middle of the fashion district, which I think we had the sewing shop below us, and we had the assembly dress shop above us. So it was not it was a beautiful address. It was a horrible location. We had approximately, and everyone gets a big kick out of this, we had approximately 8,500 square feet, and we had about 130 employees in 8,500 square feet. It was amazing.
Elbow to elbow.
Elbow to elbow. But that did, like I said, that did give me this opportunity to learn how to run a business. It's not just how do I take paper from one area to the next. How do I start managing the business from an expense standpoint? How do we manage a business from an overhead standpoint? There's so many of those things that I was able to learn there. And then as I transitioned out of there, because Concord EFS was acquired by First Data, I had the opportunity to go work with a friend of mine and start a company from scratch. I had never really started a company from scratch, but this gave me the opportunity now that I had learned management and I had learned how to manage and grow a business from a financial standpoint. This was we learned how to grow a business from its infancy into its maturity. And we did that and moved it to Atlanta. And that was a company called Pipeline Data.
So you go from data entry to managing this, ISO more or less, or payments company out of New York. Elaina, this is sort of when you come into the picture. I'm guessing you're the auditor,
Yes.
Fancy office. Not so
okay.
fancy now that I get
You
it.
say so.
How exactly did that, transition from, working from this large auditing company,
Right.
Stumbling upon payments, and obviously Kevin, I would say altogether.
I was working in public accounting at the time and met him obviously when I was assigned to audit the operations that he had in New York. And we walked into this place and the whole premise of the audit was protecting cardholder data. And so we see that these servers are in the break room of his office, right next to the sink, and we see fax machine pages just piling out with card numbers all blatantly, we knew immediately this was a fail, right? There was nothing to see here. So we knew just after a day of being there that there was nothing to see. So Kevin comes in and says, hey, I'm cleaning all this up. Don't worry about this. I'm going to tell you all about my project plan, but first, let's just come out. We're in New York. We're in Manhattan. Let's go out and have some drinks together. So the rest is history, obviously. We went back and forth every weekend after that, after we met. And when he started Pipeline, I wasn't very involved with that. I kind of helped a little bit in the background, but wasn't very involved with that. It wasn't until we started Secure Bancard that I really became very much involved and really helped with finance for that.
So it was, you say, your ability, or I would say your experience in the auditing, and
Right.
really sort of gave you the foundation to later on become sort of manage the finance, because, as probably touched in previous episodes is, you have a great idea, well, now you have to be able to manage your finance and be able to keep up with, the financial needs of the organization, eventually, which becomes the blood of the company.
Right. Right.
And at what point did you say, hey, I'm leaving my auditing career, I am diving in, and we are doing this together?
Right.
As a
Honestly,
family, I'll say.
right. Yeah, it wasn't until Secure Bancard. Like I said, with Pipeline, I kind of helped out in the background a little bit. Helped with bin balancing, settlement, accounting, that kind of stuff.
So did you still have your day job at that point?
I did not. No, I did not. I wasn't really involved in payments except for helping him, and I didn't really honestly find it very interesting at that time. And honestly, the first couple of years, I would say, when we started Secure Bancard, I wasn't very involved. We had just had our third child, so I don't think that I had the choice of I was more a mom than anything else at that point. It was just too much hands-on being a mom to become involved. And I wasn't that excited about payments. And I think it was just because of the juggle, right? It was just too much going on. And then as time has gone on, I've fallen in love with payments. I think it's so interesting. It's changing every day. There's always something new. It's not just accounting for me. I help in I try to do many other things. I just think it's so interesting. I'm learning something new every single day, and there's no other industry that's quite like this. There's so much change and so much excitement around it.
That's the beauty of it. It's constantly evolving, which keeps us constantly learning, I would say. So Kevin, you decide, okay, let's start this brand new company, move to Atlanta. Elaina is, for what I understand, you're on your way to your third child.
Right.
And Kevin decides, hey, honey, I am quitting and I am starting this brand new company, and we're moving to Atlanta.
Well, you got to remember, Sebastian, you got to understand, it's not always as romantic as everyone makes it out to be. There's always that one point that you start off where you have to take this leap. You have to take this leap of faith. Okay? I would love to tell you that I was strong and proud and I knew that we could do this and I knew it would be a success. It would be a complete lie. That's not what happened. That's not how it occurred. I came home one day from work and I talked to Elaina, and Elaina looked me square in the eyes and said, if you do not quit your job, you're going to go in there and kill someone. She said, have too much stress, and if you're going to have stress like this, there's no reason for you not to do this on your own. Now, like most everyone else, okay, we had a great household income. We had we had a great foundation under ourselves, but we did not have an enormous financial wealth set aside to start a business. We certainly didn't understand or appreciate what that was going to look like the first 2 years. It's completely different than you'll ever imagine. It's not all rainbows and ice cream, I promise you. But it was Elaina that pushed me, and in turn as well, Stephen Dunn, who I had started working for at Bancard Systems 25 years before. I called him, he was my mentor, and his question to me was, why haven't we already done this? You should obviously go out and do this. You've built one before, you've worked with one before, you understand how companies run. There's no reason you shouldn't be doing this. And that's how that spark got us over. I would love to tell you it was because I had this heroic moment that I decided I was going to go be a grown-up individual and do this wonderful thing. It wasn't. I had others pushing me out over the edge and getting me motivated to do this.
So at this time, Pipeline Data was no longer Pipeline Data because they had been acquired by private equity. It's so common in payments, right? The private equity steps in, and sometimes that's a great situation. Other times they are very hovering, and you can't be an operator the way that you were before. You're not calling all the shots anymore. They want a certain number, and you deliver that number, and then next time they're going to look for a little bit more. And it was a whole different environment. It became very political. It just wasn't I just saw how toxic it was for him, and it just wasn't productive any longer. And I thought, if we're going to do this, the time is now to do this. And I'm glad looking back, it's so easy, right? Hindsight. Glad that we took the leap because it's been life-changing for us. There's no other way to describe it than life-changing. It's been really, in the beginning, obviously, for he and I to work together was a little rocky. We weren't used to it, especially when he was working out of our basement in the house. And we had another employee that was working out of the basement in the house. That was a little odd and took some getting used to. Yeah, all of a sudden. No, well, it was actually Dinah, Daniel's,
Okay.
Danny's
Actually,
wife.
Danny worked on, Danny's office was the actual steps down to the basement. He sat on the steps with his laptop as we first started, and his wife Dinah, obviously a great operational mind. We would have been able to get off if we hadn't had Dinah there to help us get through that. But you look back at that, and I tell people there are monumental moments in your life that you experience. And especially, you never forget them. And the two greatest moments of my life were the day that I got to marry my wife. That was one of my greatest days of my life. The second greatest day, and it's the day that saved my marriage, was the day that we actually got a real office, and Elaina got to stay at home and I had to go to the office.
Yeah, it was a little rough in the basement years, I like to call them, the basement years. Just because all of a sudden he was going to the office before, and now the office is our home. And daily he's checking in with me. What do you have going on today? Well, I have 3 young kids. I'm managing, and I'm trying to do the finance stuff for you. Separate from that, I'm trying to juggle. Please don't ask me that question. I'm going to figure it out, but maybe I don't know the answer right now. So that was a little bit of just as we adjusted to working together, he has a very different work style than I do. He's much more direct and aggressive. I'm much more kill him with kindness, kind of. That's my approach. So just working out those things and figuring out how we complement each other and not, come against each other. That was an adjustment for sure.
You truly never know an individual until you're with them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, working with them, trying to accomplish goals together, trying to understand how best to work together, because working together and being in a relationship together are two different, completely different things. You know this. You experienced this yourself. It's an adjustment, and it can be an adjustment that makes not only your work relationship, your work life wonderful, but it also can make your relationship life wonderful. And I'm a big believer in there's certain things that are either make or break, and that's one of them, is getting adjusted to that time together and adjusting to each other.
So how much time would you say, put it a little bit into perspective between, the grinding in the basement, I guess Secure Bancard was started in a garage for a basement in this case, from grinding in this basement, to learning, obviously you had been, together for quite some time by that point. To really, really hone in into, okay, we completely understand, there's that unison almost, that almost understand completely about not only a relationship, but even how to work together, which, as you mentioned, it could be very different at times. How much time did that, between, okay, let's get started, we're working together, to the point where, okay, now we are in sync and we have figured out sort of the motions behind how to operate as a unit rather than two, separate individuals, more or less.
You mean, how long does it take to get to the moment where you can actually go,
Right, where it's on autopilot, more or less,
I would say it's never on autopilot. I will say it does reach that point where you can actually take a breath. I know for us, it was probably, I'm going to say 2.5 years. The first 2 years, 2.5 years, all you're doing is running as fast as you can, trying to accomplish every impossible goal that you can think of. You're trying to say yes to everyone. And at the same time, you're watching the bank account, because there's no income. You're watching the bank account count down, and you're sitting down with your calendar, and you're trying to figure out, all right, we have this much money. All right, we're burning through this much a day. That means we have this many days left.
What's the runway, as we call it?
And it just becomes so intense, and it weighs so heavily on you. It was a good 2.5 years before we finally had that exhale.
Yeah, well, it helped once you do pass that break-even point, and you're not running out anymore, and you're in the positive, and you're ramping up from there. That's a huge weight off your shoulders, because now all of a sudden the bank account has stopped going down and it's actually increasing, and you can see that you're building something, and you must have something that's working. If you're obviously moving in the right direction, we're on the right path.
I can imagine the stress of, having, I'm guessing by this point the third one is out already.
Yes.
Bank account is dwindling.
Yes.
Still rolling down the sleeves, working, in the basement, and I can imagine the stress that you guys went through. Would you say, in terms of, not to get too personal, but I feel like diamonds are forged under pressure, I feel like there's a lot of pressure going on in that particular moment. How would you guys say that, maybe that changed the way that you work together, live together, even, enjoy time together,
The most difficult thing I think that you really have to work at, especially as a couple, okay? How do you separate work and non-work, and especially in an environment where it's your organization and your company, okay? The first thing you think of when you get up in the morning as an owner of a company is the company. The last thing you think about when you go to sleep at night, if you can sleep, and I think that's one of the secrets, if you can sleep, is the company. So how do you, if the both of you or the two of you are working together in this, and you're working side by side, how do you carve out that time or carve out that space that says, we have to focus on us, or we have to focus on the kids, or we have to focus on something other than the business. Prioritizing. That was probably one of the most difficult things for me to deal with and find out and figure out. And you have to figure that out. If you don't, you're going to go crazy.
But the flip side of that too is that the nice thing is we're both working toward this common goal, right? In so many marriages, sometimes there's two different career paths, and sometimes you're faced with this decision of, do we move to advance this career, or do we move to advance that career, or does this person have to sacrifice and be with the kids for this person's career to take off? We are on the same path, we're working toward the same goal, And that's refreshing for our marriage because we're always working toward that same eventual objective and trying to build this business. And we have the same vision for that business. And so that makes it so much easier with our relationship in that regard.
Yeah, it's like, once you decide to share the road together, now projecting yourself into the future, into what you want to build together, I imagine it's a lot easier now to, navigate through the struggles that would emerge later on, which, I'm kind of foreshadowing at this point a little bit, because you guys are signing up merchants, bringing them on board, and there's something peculiar that happened with your sponsor bank, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Love to, because that's one of those, you're going back,
It's
one
a
of those
defining moment.
defining moment into the chapter of what it is today, Secure Bancard. And I'd love to dive into a little bit into what went on.
As you spoke of a minute ago, there's two moments in our Secure Bancard life that were altering. The first one was the moment we no longer had company insurance, the moment we had separated ourselves so that we had no income. Elaina informed me that the third baby was on the way and that she was pregnant. Nothing is going to make you work harder, faster, longer, more dedicated than that. You've got to figure, there is no option for failure at that point. You have to make it work. The second one was, as you were talking about, the company is 6 months old. We're starting to get things going. We're starting to get things moving. Finally. And our sponsor bank has no ability to board merchants anymore. They failed their FDIC audit. Having to grab that bull by the horns, find a new sponsor bank, go into the new sponsor bank and get them to buy into your dream and get them to buy into your belief. This is not moving a portfolio of 50,000 merchants from one sponsor bank to another. I think we had 6.
Very few. Yeah, so you're getting them to buy into your vision. There's nothing really there yet of substance to show for it. And they're taking a huge risk on us. We are a young company and we don't have that much to show for it yet. We have a vision, we have a business plan, we don't have anything else other than this handful of merchants.
And we were very fortunate. Not only did we have ourselves believing in our vision, but we found a sponsor bank in Synovus that was willing to listen and hear and believe in our vision and move forward with us. And quite honestly, we also had friends like Zahara, our attorney, that was able to assist and help us with that because she saw what we were doing and she saw our vision and she believed in what we were doing. If it hadn't been for Zahara, we probably would have never been able to get through that period by ourselves.
And it's a good lesson in your reputation is everything. And that's the one thing that in payments, I think that everyone needs to be mindful of. Never burn a bridge. Always do the right thing because there will be a moment where it comes down to what are people saying about you and what is your track history? What is it that you are all about? And if we didn't have the reputation that we did, and Zahara didn't know Kevin in the way that she did, we didn't have the contacts at Synovus that we did, it all worked for us. It could have just as well worked against us.
Right. No, I can imagine you're grinding away, you're finally, you're seeing the bank account dwindle month after month. And finally, when you stick your head out, get some fresh air, now you get some bad news from sources that, completely you have no control of. And that's sort of, with life and business that sometimes you get thrown a curveball and you have to, work at your best abilities to be able to navigate those turbulent waters. So you figure it out. Once again, get a new sponsor bank, and we'll fast forward a little bit into, okay, things are going well. I would imagine by the time that you get the new sponsor bank, things smoothen out, right? And then, you continue for, how long was it more or less?
Before we started.
No, after, so you get the new sponsor bank and, things will start kind of, I would imagine, smoothing out, right?
Right.
Navigating a little better, how long was that, more or less with that golden era period, I would say? Or was there obstacles that, after that big defining moment, was still obstacles as you continue through the journey?
I would not say that after that there was any golden defining moment. I would say after that, it's just hard work. It's literally forcing yourself to get up today and continue to do the same thing you've done every day and continue to push forward, continue to push the rock up the hill. It's, and it's grinding, and at times it feels like it's relentless, and it feels like it's monotonous, and in a way it is, but you have to keep doing it. There is reward in there, through that dedication, but you have to get there. And the only way to get there is going through and pushing on a daily basis, continuing to separate yourself and finding what is it that separates yourself from everyone else. Credit card processing is credit card processing. I'm not going to tell you that it's magic. It's magic to a lot of people, but it's not magic. It's math. Elaina hates it when I say that. It's math.
just math. That's his favorite
It's very
thing.
simple. Very simple.
It's math. And Sebastian, you've heard me say that many, many times. It's math. But what is it that you're doing with that math, or what is it that you're doing with that separates you from everyone else? And the next defining chapter for us was the envisionment of Pioneer and pushing forward with, how do we do something that no one else is doing? Why do we want to do something that no one else is doing? How does that make us more competitive? How does that make us better?
And
for
committing
us,
to reinvesting, now, yes, taking all of that, because you want to, it's so tempting, right, to take it off the
Take some
table,
off the table and live a little
pocket
more
it,
comfortable,
yeah, or
you know?
put it away for, sometime tomorrow, but to actually put it back on the table, put the chips back out there and roll the dice and gamble. But we believed in it so much in what we were doing that we knew it was worth it, and we had to do it. It was very difficult. That's probably the second hardest part of our time in the company, was making that decision, because it's not easy to develop software and manage a team of developers. That was,
no, especially,
and we didn't know what we were doing, right? We had never done this before, so that part of it was very difficult. But here we are on the other side of that, and we'll tell you a million times over, it was well worth it. We have something now that no one else has, and that is our differentiator. That's the way we run our business. We have a platform that it's all in one. It's ours. We are in control of our own destiny with this platform. And it was well worth it, even though it was very risky at the time.
Right, especially I'd imagine Kevin had to brush out his computer science degree
Yes.
After many, many years, and probably things had changed in terms of how software was developed currently versus before.
and I can tell you, Sebastian, that probably caused us more issues than it did solutions. Being the one in the
He
room
thinks
that
he knows, but he doesn't know.
You know enough to get yourself in trouble, but not enough to get yourself out of the hole.
Out of the hole, right. No, that's I feel that you guys developed Pioneer, which was a completely new venture for your business, but it was primarily to solve, your own pain points. And I feel that that's a lot of how software products end up getting developed today is, experience a pain point, want to find a solution to it. And there is no solution out there in the market that can facilitate this particular or solve this particular pain point. In your case, it was more related to the day-to-day management of the organization as a whole, and how do you guys are able to take, as you mentioned before, more control of your destiny. What would you say is, having been in the payments industry for so long, Kevin, over 3 decades, if I'm not mistaken, in the business. It's a question I always ask to other founders that come on board, and where do you see the future of payments evolving, and even your own organization within it, with Pioneer becoming sort of the new chapter in the book of Secure Bancard, and ultimately your life together.
And you and I have had these discussions many times. You, me, and Tad have had these discussions many times. Where are we going? And I think there's 2 major areas we're going to. The first one is compliance. The compliance continues to get tighter and tighter in our industry. I do think that's a good thing. It increases the barrier of entry. It keeps those that are doing what they're supposed to be doing in the game, those that are not doing what they're supposed to be doing out of the game. The second thing is data. Data, statistics, mathematics, those are the pioneer structural points of what we do today. I do not believe, and I know you're a big firm believer in this as well, I do not believe as an industry we are utilizing that to its full potential. I think we're just barely scratching the surface on that. We're learning that as we have built our own platform. You're learning that as you're building out your platform and what you're doing from this actuarial standpoint. That is going to revolutionize our industry. Right now we have the data. We don't know what to do with it. We're not sure what we have. Once we figure that out, once we start to utilize that, and those that do will, and they will prosper from that. I think that is the next major step in our industry.
Elaina,
I would agree with that. You know, I'm a data nerd, so I would agree. It's all about the data and what are you doing with the data? How are you using it to your benefit? How are you predicting what's about to happen based on the data? You have all this historical data. What are you doing with it? And how are you using it to run your business?
It's almost like we finally tapped into the oil well. Now it's about a matter of time before we build the refineries and are able to pull out or generate the gasoline and ultimately create the real value, extract the real value of this information.
Yes.
Kevin, Elaina, thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed our discussion.
Oh, Sebastian, thank you.
I'll bring it in. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Sebastian, always good.
Enjoy you guys coming on our show.
And that's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Wrapping up another episode of Founders Talks, where we talk to founders about how they got started, where they're going. See you next time.